Awesome. Thank you so much, Haley. Thank you, Stephanie and Haley, for having me today, and welcome and good morning to everyone here tuning in. I am really excited to talk about resumes, and I like to call this presentation Resumes That Resonate, because I think a lot of people think of resumes as like an outdated formality that are just something you kind of have to go through the job search process. But we think about resumes a little bit differently over here at Work Wonders Careers. We think about resumes as a career asset. And today I'm hoping to debunk some myths about what your resume might need to look like or what it should include, and really help you think about using your resume as a tool to communicate your value to potential employers and to potential folks in your network, so that you can understand both what you need to do to look like a good candidate, but also how to use your resume, because having one is going to be not enough. So we want to think about how to use our resumes strategically as we're going through the job search process. Now, you might be asking yourself, like, who is this random lady that's a little too excited to chat about resumes today? And my name is Jen Walker-Wall. I'm the founder of Work Wonders Careers. And for the last 7 years, I've been helping people land new jobs and thrive at work. We do resume writing, we do career coaching, career strategy, and we're probably best known for our Work Wonders & Co. group program for job seekers. So I have been in the job search space for almost 7 years, and I love this. This is such a great niche for us, because people don't realize that the job search isn't just about the job search. It's about self-advocacy, which really informs how you approach your entire career. So I always say, if you can't job search well, you're probably not going to manage your career well. And I'm really excited because one of the things that prompted me to start Work Wonders Careers is that my background was in hiring. So early on in my career, I spent almost 7 years too, watching thousands of people apply for jobs, and hundreds go through the interview process. And by observing that and being involved in that process, I saw what it took for people to stand out. I saw that there were multiple stakeholders, not just recruiters, not just hiring managers, multiple stakeholders in the hiring process. And now I spend my days helping professionals leverage that sort of behind the scenes insight in their own job search process. So I'm going to be talking a big overview today about resumes. Trust me, I could talk about resumes for many hours at a time. But I'm going to give you an overview of how we help our clients think and transform about resumes. And if you have questions or if you want to stay in touch, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I go live almost every Wednesday over there. So you can send me a message over there or follow me, and I'll be sure to send you an invitation to our next live. You can also find me over on Instagram. And of course, we have a Work Wonders page on LinkedIn as well. Awesome. Haley just filled up her coffee. Good. That's what we want. So here are some objectives for today. I want to help you dispel some myths and rumors around resumes that may be holding you back from really articulating your strength and value and leaving you feeling good about what your resume actually looks like. Believe it or not, how excited our clients are about their resume is kind of a metric we think about quite a bit, because when people see the level of alignment they can have for jobs, even jobs that feel like a stretch, they're blown away and way more excited to apply. So that's where we're going to start today. I also want to help you think about how to prepare to write your resume, because this is the step that most people skip. And we think it's actually really critical to do the preparation piece well. We'll also be talking about conveying your most compelling experience and what that will look like on your resume, how to do that clearly and quickly and concisely. And because resumes are not just about resumes, we're going to talk a little bit about managing your fear and energy and your time along the way. So I'll share some of my tips on how we can kind of manage the application process a little bit more efficiently. But first, I want to talk about some ideas you may already have about resumes. And these are probably some things you'll have heard. So if you've ever heard your resume should be just one page, drop a 1 in the chat. This is a pretty common thing that I hear quite a bit. If you've ever heard that you should use an objective statement or seen a resume using an objective statement, drop a 2 in the chat. If you've heard you should forget about applying online and just focus on building your network, drop a 3 in the chat. If you've heard that your resume needs to include a lot of keywords to get through the ATS, go ahead and drop, what are we on? A 4 in the chat. If you've heard no one reads cover letters, drop a 5. If you are very into having the perfectly designed resume, drop a 6 in the chat. Okay, so let me just take a peek because I see some people. All right, so I'm seeing all of the numbers here. Okay, so these are all pretty common things we've all heard. But writing resumes is like a little bit like Fight Club. Like there aren't any rules. Okay, we're not going to have to do what we're told. We're going to really think for ourselves about what our resume needs to include. And so here's how we turn some of these norms or practices or kind of outdated ideas on their head over here. A one-page resume will probably work for a while. So, right, if you're just out of college, you don't have a ton of work experience, no reason your resume should be longer. But once people hit that anywhere from 8 to 12 year mark, it gets really hard for most people to keep everything on one page. And a huge, huge piece of resumes that I hardly ever see discussed is how it must be easy for people to read your resume quickly. And we're not talking read your resume in depth. I always tell my clients, no one's going to spend as much time on your resume as I am. They're going to be scanning it, right? Recruiters are looking at resumes very, very quickly. Hiring managers are probably spending a little bit more time because they're not looking through as many applicants, but they are doing the rest of their job, which is probably not exclusively hiring. So there needs to be a lot of conciseness in this process. So one thing moving onto a second page can sometimes offer people is a little bit more white space, and that can make things easier to consume quickly. Here's a hill I'm happy to die on. I don't think an objective statement adds any value to your position as a candidate. But using that space right at the top of your resume is actually pretty powerful real estate, since most of us are Boston-based. Think about the Seaport or Kendall Square. Okay, it's an expensive place to be. We want to build something there that's going to be really valuable, that's going to get us a return on our investment. And so we like to use a customized summary here, which is something I'll be showing you how we do that during this webinar. Your resume and networking are not mutually exclusive strategies. In the last few weeks, we've had 6 people get interviews. And some of those folks have even gotten offers. And I would say probably half had connections inside and half did not. And actually, one of the people who had connections inside got traction with their resume without having to actually leverage that connection to put their resume in front of people. So I want you to think about the people you may know and the businesses that you want to work at as people who will pass your resume on, and that will certainly get you over some hurdles, but you still want to have a strong resume to make that person's job easy, right? You don't want them to have to be the only part of your candidacy that's compelling. You want to put forward something that's really compelling as well and make their job really easy for them. So these strategies go together. Now, another hill I'm willing to die on. You're going to see I feel pretty strongly about a lot of this stuff. We write resumes for human readers. There are lots of applicant tracking systems. There are lots of ways your resumes may be stored by organizations, but also humans are hiring humans. And so when people tend to overcompensate by squeezing in a lot of keywords, it sometimes is so overwhelming. We can't see your actual strengths. We can't see the parts that are most relevant for the position at hand. And so when we're writing for a human reader, and we keep those stakeholders in mind. So in my mind, those are the recruiter first and the hiring manager second. And then of course, there's other folks as well. We want to think about what are they asking for and how can we convey that as quickly and concisely as possible. And I'm personally of the mind that a giant list of keywords at the top of your resume is not it. I think it's totally true that a cover letter isn't going to be read by everyone, but it can still be important. I think most recruiters will tell you they barely pay any attention to it, but a lot of hiring managers do. And I've had a lot of conversations with hiring managers who, remember, look at fewer applicants, generally speaking. They might be more curious about you. And so for people who are making some kind of career transition or maybe have something on their resume that they feel like needs a little explanation, we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves the opportunity to do that. So I still think that there's value for a cover letter in this process. We also want to make sure that the qualifications we have for the job are clear. I see a lot of people who kind of make the assumption that because, yes, I've done that, it's in my resume, people are going to be going line by line carefully through your resume. And that's really not how it works. Recruiters have to make a decision about your candidacy quickly. We have to try and make sense of you and say, like, are you going to be able to meet the qualifications quickly? And so we want to make sure that this is very evident and not just, again, rely on a huge keywords or a lot of perhaps standard language that you use on every application. Now, I'm sure there's some design professionals here. That would make total sense for this kind of webinar and this audience. But for folks who are not design professionals, it really, you don't need a highly designed template. Design professionals often do because they're demonstrating their talent and their aesthetic and their creativity as part of their application process. But for both design professionals and non-design professionals, I really want you to think about the content of your resume, right? I just said, make sure your qualifications are clear. And so the content of our resume is often what helps us convey that. So, in general, my advice here is to not get too excited about fancy, beautiful templates, which I admit are way more beautiful than the resumes I create for people. But we really want to make sure we're speaking to people's needs. And if people don't need you to be a designer, but they need a whole bunch of other things from you, that's where we want to focus on. And if they do want you to be a designer, but there's still other things there, we want to make sure we're conveying that as well. I also kind of want to empower you here a little bit. I think people get so in the mode of am I following the rules? Am I doing this right? I want you to really think how do you want to present yourself in this process? Because there is so much room for that. We spend so much time helping people land jobs that are going to be a great fit for them. And you really can't do that. You can't land a job that's a great fit for you without really showcasing a little bit about who you are and what's important to you in the job search process. So keep that in mind. It's not just about doing it right. There is a piece of this that is about authenticity and integrity in your actual experience and goals. So here are some transformations we like to see people make when they're working with us. There's two possibilities when people come to us. They are applying everywhere or they are applying nowhere. And so we actually try to find something in the middle where people are focused and know what roles are really exciting, intriguing, and they want to learn more about. So we try to kind of find a middle ground there. People feel like they're too busy to customize or they don't know how to customize their applications. So we help them. We look at the jobs that they're applying for and interested in, and we help them create some easy to edit and modify templates so that they can go through this process quickly. A lot of folks know the customization of your resume is key, right? But sometimes the tweaks that they're making are just not strategic enough. They're not speaking at the level that we need to really help elevate their candidacy. So we want to make sure that people know how to write a resume that is going to align with specific jobs. So they have the templates and the pieces and the knowledge to do that on their own. And it takes a little bit of time for sure, but it doesn't take as much time as people think. So here's my list of boring but effective resume best practices. It must be easy to read. White space, margins, bullet points, as easy as you can make it really, because people are scanning, they are not reading in depth, so keep that in mind. We want to demonstrate that we meet the qualifications. So many times I see people decide if a job is right for them by saying I can do these things, I have done these things, but we don't spend much time, or they don't spend much time necessarily clearly conveying that. So that list of qualifications and preferred qualifications are things that you want to speak to. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that. The job posting is a great guide, right? So sometimes people just get so excited about the opportunity, or they're just so excited to leave the job they currently have that they just kind of throw an application out there. And don't get me wrong, I'm no perfectionist, and a submitted application is better than not one at all. My clients know that I say that all the time. But we really want to pay attention to the information that we're given about the role, because that can help us tremendously in framing our strengths and conveying value in the right way. I want you to think about practicing communicating your experience confidently and with integrity. People are underselling themselves all the time in their resumes. They're not using the right language. They feel maybe bored or burned out in their current role, or they don't see the value they add, or people don't treat them like they are valuable contributors, and they start to internalize that. So I really want you to think about, what is the impact of my work? Even if you don't have metrics, what is your work enabling throughout your organization? Or what does it have even the potential to do, right? If you're perhaps a recent graduate. Avoid submitting resumes with distracting design elements. So a lot of times I will see people who will put really critical information on a like a column on all the way on the end of their resume, or something will be all the way at the bottom because the top third is highly designed. And again, people are looking quickly. They're not going to be going necessarily through second and third pages of your resume. So make sure, if your name is like in size, 85 font, your second job is on that second page. An easy fix is sometimes just to make sure your name takes up a little bit less space there. Patience is a huge piece of this, which nobody ever wants to hear, but I do think is a little bit of a key. Now, again, in the last 6 weeks, people have been getting traction. I had a client yesterday submit a resume and get a call back and an interview. He interviewed yesterday after submitting his resume. But that's not normal. It's a cool, fun story. And he was pretty excited, but that's not normal. And we've been seeing faster and faster turnaround as we move through 2021. But also there's a lot of job seekers right now. And sometimes the sheer volume of applicants to review can slow things down a little bit. One of my favorite tips for my clients to implement is to apply to the posting as early as possible. When I was reviewing candidates as that initial, or applicants at that initial phase, I would, within 3 or 4 days, I would be able to spend a lot of time looking at each person's resume. But within 10 to 14 days, there were hundreds of people that had applied. So it became very difficult to really kind of quickly figure out who I could spend time on and spend a lot of time on any one person's resume. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, this lady wants me to customize my resume and she wants me to turn it in early, I want you to think about it like this. As you practice going through this process, you will get better at it and you will get faster at it. So applying early and being efficient is not necessarily where we start as a goal. We start with teaching you the basics, but within a few applications, I have no doubt that you'll be able to really implement this. All right, so I didn't say this, I don't think, but feel free to drop any questions you have as I go. I'm going to dive into kind of the meat and potatoes here, and I'm probably going to go quickly because I want to make sure you get all this good stuff. But if you have questions, I will stop periodically and answer them, and I'm happy to do so. This is the step that most people skip, the preparation. If you've ever sat down to write a resume, write a cover letter, and you've just have no idea what to say, you're just staring at a blank page, I got you. We spend time with our clients reflecting, reviewing, and documenting. So we reflect. This is the internal piece. What are your goals here? What are the strengths you're excited to bring to the table? We review. What are the jobs that you're interested in? Can we start to see some patterns in the kinds of roles that you're looking for? Can we start to see some patterns in what these roles are asking of the people who are applying? And I want you to start writing this down. So the documentation piece, for people going through any level of career exploration, big or small, if you know what kind of job you want, this could not take you much time at all. If you're more exploratory, this could take you a few weeks, a couple months. Either way, writing things down helps make them real, helps you be able to revisit them. Sometimes when we're doing the exploratory work or the self-reflection work, if we're just thinking and keeping it in our heads, we can a couple weeks later feel like we haven't accomplished much. But when we write things down, we can revisit them. And what we're doing really here is I kind of consider this a rough draft. We're creating so much content and none of it is ready for anyone else to see. Don't get me wrong. But this is about generating self-knowledge and insight and building clarity and confidence. So if you're struggling with any of those things, this is a good place to spend some time. We have our clients do exercises. We have prompts for them. We look at job postings with them, and we have them document all of this work so that they can really take stock of what they're learning. Here are some questions that I think are really critical. What do you want more of? What do you want less of? What are your goals, interests, and values is the next step of your career? What are you most proud of? If you only answer one question, this one tends to be my favorite, just FYI. What are you most curious about? And what's missing right now? So a lot of people, especially people who have many years of experience, have a lot of things that they haven't added or don't know where they fit in. And so we really want to think, what would you like your resume to do for you that you don't think it's currently doing? And I want you to give yourself permission to spend a little bit of time on this. Again, an hour is better than nothing. If you're really pressed and the job search feels urgent, set a timer, for an hour today and see if you can answer some of these questions for yourself. See if you can identify 2 to 3 jobs and understand for yourself what they have in common and why they're a great fit for you. The purpose of this is to really help you understand like what's going to make the next job the right job for you. And the clearer you can get, the easier it's going to be to convey why you should have these opportunities or why you'd be a great person to fill these roles using your resume. So let's talk a little bit about taking the preparation and turning it into great resume writing content. So when you find a job and you are ready to apply, let's just hone in on that specific opportunity. What are the most relevant experience that you have for this role? Do you know anyone who works here, or do you know anyone who knows anyone who works here? And this isn't just about getting your resume in front of the right people, but it's also about like, do you have time to kind of learn more about the team or the organization or the opportunity so that you can perhaps tailor your materials with additional insight in mind that may not be evident from the job posting itself. Spend a few minutes, right, just brainstorming, documenting again in a role-specific way, how you might want to respond, what you're excited to share with them, and pay attention to the qualifications. Highlight soft skills versus technical skills. I'm going to show you an example of that in just a second. So here's just a random position I pulled offline a couple of years ago. So you can see it's really long. You don't actually have to read everything. Here's what I want to show you. Here's what I do. So I've highlighted in pink some things that I would consider like soft skills or attributes. In blue here, I have some experience in specific domains, the years of experience, the bachelor's degree, marketing, communications, social media marketing, graphic, layout. There's a lot they're asking for here. And then in black, I have some more technical skills, right? So Adobe, Microsoft, MailChimp, LinkedIn. So this is what the recruiter is looking for to ensure that you can perform the job. And so they're going to pass on people that they think meet these qualifications onto the hiring manager. So how do we show someone that we have these qualifications without them going line by line through our resume, because nobody has time for that, right? So I use what I call a summary of qualifications. And one way to do this is to create, this is an example, right? So I have consolidated the years of experience. I have consolidated some of the work around social media. I've consolidated the soft skills, and I've consolidated some of the technical skills to speak to the person using that. So this was just for an example client. So this is what we ended up going with. And there are multiple ways to do this well. So for example, I could add typography and some of these other elements here. I could, say if this person, for example, didn't have experience using MailChimp, I could instead say some other email marketing system, or just say email marketing broadly. So there's a lot of ways that we can do this well, depending on the client's actual experience and what they're asking for and all of that. So this isn't about doing this perfectly, but it is 3 to 5 bullet points at the top of your resume that speak about you, but we use the qualifications as like a cookie cutter to like figure out what exactly we're going to say about you. It's not a biography. It's not inclusive. It is the highlights that are going to be meaningful to the people who are doing the hiring. And we know this because they have told us what is most important to them. So a couple of things about making this work. 3 to 5 bullet points max. It should be easy to read, and it should be a bulleted list. I think that makes it a lot easier to scan. I also just want to draw your attention to some of the frameworks here, because this is easy to replicate. So we can say X years of experience in A, B, and C, right? Fill in the blank there with pieces of the job, domains that they're asking for that you can speak to. Demonstrated ability to fill in the blank with what they're asking for. Effective collaborator, team player, manager, contributor, right? Like think about what they're asking for and give yourself a chance to speak to that. Confident user of, fill in the blank, right? So whatever kind of technical skills or software or applications they're asking for, this is a great way to use that. And what a lot of our clients do is they will reuse some of that language and just fill in the blank with what's being asked for. We're not taking it like verbatim, but we are using some of that language back at them so that they recognize like this person has what we are looking for. This will make you appear as qualified as possible, as quickly as possible, which is what we want. It keeps us able to be concise and clear, which is also what we want. Also, this is great preparation for leading into the interview process, because you're able to not just send your application out there, but rather you are understanding how to distill your experience in a way that's helpful to other people. We're mirroring some of their language, not word for word, line by line, but we are making sure that the pieces that are important to them are things that we're speaking for. And best of all, this is easy to modify, right? Like, this is a template you can keep at the top of your resumes, and you just fill in the blank. This is where you have the strategic setup, and you can really just leverage the job's qualifications as the opportunities come along. So I just want to share some of my other favorite resume tips here. That summary of qualifications is a real game changer for a lot of my clients, especially people making a transition, especially people making a growth opportunity. So I really want you to encourage you to experiment a little bit with that. But here are some other things that can be really helpful for resume writers. Consider using percentages instead of raw numbers, if that's going to help you kind of convey impact without drawing attention to a huge difference of scale. That's one of my favorite things to do when people are applying for much bigger numbers and they feel like they have tiny metrics, is just use percentages. Adjust language when appropriate. So think about whether you can say customers or clients or users. Making small changes in language like that can go a long way towards resonating with people who are doing the hiring, right? Use outcome or achievement-oriented language when possible. I think that is so important. So many people come to me and are like, I don't have metrics. So I want you to think about, what are the outcomes? A lot of people have very descriptive jobs bullet points, and that's okay once in a while, but we really want to think about, what are you doing there that is adding value? And if it's creating processes and it doesn't feel like you have those kind of end results, think about using words like create, oversaw, led, right? Like any process-oriented job might have, you might struggle a little bit to come up with those real hard outcomes, but creating the infrastructure is a very valuable skill. So make sure to give yourself credit for that. Again, bullet points, margins, line space, white space, so critical for making your resume easy to read. Name your document something other than resume. So if you've heard me give this webinar before or talk about resumes, you may know my husband has worked in recruiting. So we spend a lot of time talking about resumes in this household. And one of the things I said to him before I gave this webinar once was, what's your advice for people who are working on their resumes right now? And he said, please name it something other than resume, because he opens up, you can imagine, so many documents every day, and they're all titled resume. So using your name, using the requisition number, using the job title, and adding that into the document title can help you look really organized. And that's a great thing to demonstrate as an applicant as part of this process. You want to make sure that the details are accurate and you're following online procedures. Sounds basic, but integrity and following directions are so key. I don't think you need to fluff on your resume. I don't think you need to lie. I don't think you should. That's never part of our strategy. And you want to pay attention to what employers are asking for in terms of the application process, because people who don't follow directions, very easy to kind of rule them out. I also want you to consider reaching out to connections when that's possible. I generally think it's okay, especially if you feel like you know what you're doing with your resume, to go ahead and submit your resume and then let your network know, your connections know. But if you think the job's just been posted and you have a little bit of time, definitely reach out and see if you can gather some additional information. Again, your resume and network work best when they're working together. I have a question here. Do you know what kind of resume is the best kind of resume? So as much as I love for my clients to know how to use their resume, know how to write a customized summary of qualifications, know how to create outcome-oriented bullet points in their job descriptions, all of that is so key. And it's something I want all of my clients to learn. But at Work Wonders, we believe that the best kind of resume is a submitted resume. There's so many opportunities to second guess yourself, to wonder if your resume is perfect. And I think it's really important to submit clean, clear, well-written documents, of course. But at the end of the day, something that's well-written and only on your desktop or somewhere in Google Docs and doesn't get shared isn't going to be considered. So the best kind of resume is a submitted resume, and the best kind of action to take in your job search is one that sets you up for interaction. So much of this process gets in our head. So I want you to really keep that in mind, that that you want to be putting resumes out there. We can iterate and get better as we go, but if you don't submit, you won't be considered. So how do we make this process more efficient? Practice, practice, practice. Usually within 3 to 5 applications, my clients do not need my eyeballs on their work in progress. They get totally confident and they can figure that out. And I would say 3 to 5 jobs takes my clients anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to apply for. So it's a good amount of time to have a plan to improve your overall resume strategy. And you're applying along the way and still giving yourself an opportunity to connect and get an interview. Create templates for yourself. A lot of our clients have a couple of different kinds of roles that they're interested in. So having something that's optimized for those kinds of roles can help give you a head start. Focus on being consistent. I think that's really critical. So make sure that, let me just flip over here. Sorry, I want to make sure I'm seeing everything. Focus on being consistent. If you're only applying for one job every several weeks, it's hard to know if your resume is working for you. So consistency is really key here. Focus on quality over quantity. If you are someone coming into this webinar and you are applying everywhere, I want you to think about focusing on the roles that you feel really excited about and working to create a resume that really aligns with those opportunities. That's going to be so key. And try managing your job search from a more selective position. I know it's very tempting to try and give yourself as many opportunities as possible, but what we actually find is that people have way better luck and get more traction with fewer applications, even though it feels counterintuitive, and people who want a new job urgently are terrified to try it, but it works quite well for a lot of our clients. And ultimately, what I want you to remember is that there are many ways to do this well. It does not just have to be, one way or no way. There are a lot of good resumes. Some of my clients use different kinds of templates. I create everything in Google Docs. I only use pretty much Arial, bold font, bullet points. I don't use anything fancy, but some people will have some lines or some minimal design elements. And as long as it's not taking away from conveying your qualifications, I think that's totally fine. All right, so this is actually one of my last slides. I think it is my second to last slide, last official slide. So if people have questions about anything I've shared, happy to take questions. And you're all listening very intently. So I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts on anything I've shared or wants me to review anything I've offered so far. But I want to offer a way to kind of think about assessing your resume. So we see a lot of people who are trying to transition into tech, transition into the startup world. But even if you're not a career transitioner, I think it's really helpful to kind of know how and when to manage this process. Some people try to assess their resume too soon. If they've applied for several jobs this week, but they haven't heard back, they think, okay, I guess that's not working. This can be a slow process. So I want you to consider keeping track of some things for yourself. The number of jobs you've applied for, the date even that you applied. Time passes differently for job seekers. Things can feel like they're moving really slowly. So keep track of when and what you applied to. Keep track of the number of phone screens and the number of video interviews. Keep track of the people in conversations that you may be reaching out to and having conversations with, any new relationships you may be establishing as part of the process, any rejections. I think more than rejections, what people hear is crickets, right? They won't hear it all. So if it's been more than a few weeks since you've had a phone screen, maybe you consider that closed. I'm always surprised when I get on the phone with people to do a consult, how little they kind of keep track of some of this stuff. And when you keep track, it can really help you figure out, is it my resume that's not working for me? Is it that, is it the interview process? Am I stumbling a little bit in the phone screens? And so where you need to start kind of improving your process is much clearer if you keep track of some of these things. If you are more on the exploratory side and you're not applying consistently or maybe you're not ready at all, I want you to think about what you're learning. Going back to that initial step of documenting what we've learned, I think can be really helpful. The information and insight that you're gleaming from perhaps informational interviews or even webinars, or however you're sort of taking in an opportunity to learn and evaluate what's possible for you. And also, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel about the applications you're sending out? Does it feel like everything is a Hail Mary? Do you feel like you're applying to things that feel really comfortable? Do you feel like your resume is really like aligned with that role? That can be a really important indicator as well. All right, I think we have a couple more minutes. I want to just invite people again to connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Work Wonders, Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Work Wonders Careers is what I want to say. I think Haley has just popped back on. Is that true? Is that Haley? I hear someone. Yeah.
I am here.
Awesome. So if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to, I have a couple minutes now to field them. Otherwise, I can be found on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I'm happy to connect with folks over there as well. Maybe before we go, since people responded so well to the numbers, perhaps I can just ask, are people willing to share in the chat what they think they might do next with regard to their resume? Are people ready to work on a summary of qualifications? Do people need to do a little bit more self-reflection work? I would be curious to hear that as we wrap up, if anyone wants to share. Otherwise, Haley, if I should hand it back to you, let me know.
So we do have one question here from
Carol.
Great. So I'll publish this real fast.
Okay. Should I have seen that? I didn't see that. Sorry if I missed that.
Oh, it's okay.
Where? Is it under Q&A?
Yeah, it's under Q&A. So our thoughts about taking a resume that has a lot of large corporate experience and accomplishments and making it convincing for a transition to a startup.
Okay, sorry, this wasn't loading for me right away. So here, so I want you to think less about the startup, and I want you to think about what the qualifications are for the job that is actually being posted. Like, what are they asking for? And I want you to think about what you can extract from your corporate experience that speaks to that. So I'm just going to guess it might be rapid growth, strategic operations, like that kind of stuff is going to be very transferable. So like, just because you work at a large company doesn't mean that you don't have experience rapid growth or things like that. So think about less about just startups in general and more about what those roles are specifically asking for.
Okay, awesome. The questions are flying in.
Right? I know. It's so weird. I didn't see any before.
Here we go. Okay, let's do one from Marco. What is the best way?
So I will do two things here. I will default to summary of qualifications. I actually don't care what you call this, that's not part of the strategy, but I will put on my client's resume summary of qualifications. For executives, I just call it executive summary. Some of my clients will just call it personal summary or summary. So I think that's fine too. That's not necessarily part of the strategy. Just keep it clean, easy to read, bullet points, no more than 2 lines long, ideally, each line.
Awesome. Okay, Cody has one here. This is a good one. Let's publish this. Where can you find an example of a good resume? Because I know there's a lot out there.
There are. I actually just think you don't need an example. So here's literally what all of mine look like. I'm in a Google Doc. It's name and contact information. I often have to make the name smaller so we have more room to highlight the actual content. Then I do summary of qualifications. Then I will do an additional skills section for people who have a lot of technical experience. So programming languages, but also applications. So marketers sometimes have this, accountants sometimes have this. So anytime there's like a lot of applications you want to speak to, I will often use that. And then I will just use experience and then education. And if you're a recent graduate, I will switch the education and experience.
Okay, awesome. Good.
Super simple.
Dan has a question too. Here we go. Let me publish this. The approaches for self-reflection when it comes to
I think this is great. So I think there's a couple of things. There's many good ways to do this. If you go over to our website, we have we're doing our website over. So I happen to know for a fact I have 73 blog posts over there. Many include reflection questions. So I would go over there to get them. I have done LinkedIn Lives and I offer some feedback on what to do there. So I would take prompts. I would take exercises. I would just even do some free writing. Some people take notes on sort of their experience in their current job to figure out like what's working well, what's not working well. And I also like to kind of set some structure for this. So give yourself a deadline, whether it's confined to an hour or you spread these, this experience out over a few weeks for yourself, and also tell someone else about it. Like, I think there's so much value in encouragement and accountability and also just like processing here. If you have a colleague, a work friend, or a partner who can do this work with you, I think that can be really helpful too.
Okay, great. We do have one more question coming in from David. So let me publish this.
Thoughts on ways to highlight your relevant experience, which is further back, like it lands on page 2 chronologically. So the summary of qualifications will help you do this. Sometimes, so there's a couple of things I might do. I like chronological resumes in general. So what I will try to do is perhaps only include bullet points from the most recent job that are transferable. So really minimizing the content that's there so that I can pull up that second. I'm literally making the movement of like pulling up because that's how I feel, like pulling up people's relevant experience. You can also experiment with relevant experience and then additional experience. And if you want to refer further back and start with that experience you maybe had a few years ago, just change the title there so it doesn't say experience, it says relevant experience. And then you can do additional chronological experience. So either one of those should help, but also the summary of qualifications can help as well.
Awesome. Great feedback there. And I know as far as getting in touch with you, LinkedIn, is that the best way if someone's looking to work with you? And as far as what that looks like, just so everyone knows, is there a perfect time within their search that they should reach out? Is it before, during?
Great question. I mean, listen, I'll say half of our clients wait until they're suffering and half of our clients are very proactive. I recommend proactive if you can get there. If you have a lot of energy and you have a lot of bandwidth, that's when we want to start your job search. We don't want to wait until you're burned out or overwhelmed or stressed, if possible. Don't worry, we help turn things around for plenty of burned out, overwhelmed folks as well. So if people are interested in our services, our workwonderscareers.com is where you can go learn more about us. We have a mailing list that you can join, so you'll get updates about all of our events. And you can also book an assessment call. So if you want to know if it's the right time, that's something we can talk about too. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. So thank you so